Although the death penalty is tough, it's an important topic to talk about. There are many people who believe that it is the way to go to respond to crimes, but on the other hand, there are also people who believe that it's not fair to take away one's life after a crime. Supporters believe that it could help stop people from committing crimes and that it also serves as closure to a victim's family. It's not easy for families to accept their loss for their loved ones, so it's a way to help them feel that justice is served. According to Marsden, in terms of an eye for eye, people are held accountable for the crimes they committed. According to procon.org, nowadays methods like lethal injection are used to reduce suffering when going through with the sentence. Medical professions help ensure that it goes smoothly and humanely. It's also a way to keep other inmates and staff at risk.
The death penalty does not deter crime. It also is very discriminatory, and the death penalty on drugs is a blatant violation of human rights. Americans support the death penalty. This happens due to emotion rather than information. Americans tend to support the death penalty, but know very little or nothing at all about it. They also don't care to learn more about it. Racial discrimination lives within the death penalty. Going back many years ago when slaves used to be killed for minor offenses, such as picking bad tobacco, there are two types of evidence of racial disparity. Capital charging when one or more white victims are involved, and punitive treatment of cases involving a black person. This means that it is more likely for a black minority group to receive the death penalty rather than a white person when both have committed similar crimes. Cases where it is only drugs should not be punishable by death. Drug cases are not as severe as murder, mass shootings, or the killing of a congressman or president. No evidence demonstrates that the death penalty reduces crime compared to life imprisonment. Lastly, the death penalty is not consistent with determining who receives a life sentence and who receives a death.
The statistics of the death penalty show that the death penalty targets primarily the black population in the United States. The black population in the United States is approximately 13.6%. However, they make up a massive 42% of the death row population. It is about 4 times more likely for a black defendant to be given a death sentence, than for a white defendant. Statistics also show that the death penalty is discriminating against black defendants because they unfairly charge them for the death penalty compared to white defendants. In sentencing, race was found to be a very influential factor for whether the defendant was given the death penalty. Research also found that blacks who kill whites have a 46% chance to receive the death penalty, while whites who kill whites have a 28.6% chance.
This is how many people are known to have been executed last year: 1,153. That is enough people to fill this auditorium. It's a staggering 31% more than in 2022, and it's the highest figure we've recorded since 2015. Our numbers don't include the thousands of people believed to have been executed in China, the world's lead executioner, or the people executed in North Korea and Vietnam, countries that we believed continue to carry out executions, but where the death penalty numbers are a state secret or impossible to determine. But in 2023, despite the global increase, the isolated number of countries that do carry out executions reached the lowest figure on our records. In fact, Iran and Saudi Arabia were responsible for 89% of the total recorded executions in 2023. Countries where critics, protesters, and ethnic minorities are often arbitrarily sentenced to death after unfair trials. Executions were on the rise in Somalia with a 6 times increase, and they almost quadrupled in Yemen. In the USA, the number of executions was the highest since 2018, but all carried out by just 5 states. Despite the actions of a few, progress against the death penalty continues. As of today, more than 2/3 of the world, 144 countries, are abolitionist in law or practice. The death penalty has failed in its perceived promise of safety. Our long-lasting advocacy work against the death penalty makes a difference. Let's demand an end to the use of the death penalty once and for all.
So why are alternatives important for the death penalty? One of the biggest reasons is because innocent people are still being killed by the death penalty till this day. New York Times reported the death of Marcellus Williams 3 days ago. The article stated that he was a 55-year-old Black male killed by lethal injection on September 24, 2024, at a Missouri state prison. He, however, is only one of the hundreds that have been wrongfully convicted and killed by the death penalty. That's why alternatives of the death penalty, such as limited use of the death-qualified juries, tackling false confessions, looking into prosecutorial misconduct, and overall finding rehabilitation for prisoners as we await the abolition of the death penalty should be taken into consideration. So what is a death-qualified jury? According to Britannica, it is a trial jury pronounced fit to decide a case involving the death penalty. They are often biased in favor towards the death penalty and are often conviction-prone, meaning that they will find defendants guilty of and give them the death penalty. However, if normal jurors were given the choice of life without the possibility of parole, they would often choose that over the death penalty. It would also give wrongfully convicted defendants a chance to appeal and possibly be exonerated for the crimes they did not commit. Death Penalty Information Center found that more than 120 prisoners have been exonerated and subsequently released from the death row since 1973. In the case of Witherspoon versus Illinois, his attorney stated, "For the kind of juror that would be unperturbed by the prospect of sending a man to death is the kind of juror who would too readily ignore the presumption of the defendant's innocence, accept the prosecution's version of facts, and return the verdict of guilty." This still stands true to the use of death-qualified jurors and should be something that is not often used. False confessions often occur when police officers are determined that the person being questioned is guilty. This often leads to people being coerced into giving a false confession and even a guilty plea, which leads to death penalty convictions. Not only that, but it can also create barriers between the defendant and their attorney. According to Vick et al., false confessions can taint other evidence, straining the relationship with defendant lawyers and increasing the risk of prosecutorial misconduct. The National Registry of Exonerations reported that 2,095 total exonerations starting in 1989 have been until September 2017 have happened. With that, in order to ensure confessions given are not forced or coerced out of a person, the interrogation process of the individual needs to be investigated before they are prosecuted in court. Lastly, abolishing the death penalty and rehabilitation are two of the biggest issues talked about when it comes to this topic. People have tried for years to abolish the death penalty in all of the US, but it has not yet been possible. Although it is expensive to maintain, people want to see justice for defendants convicted of the death penalty. According to the Death Penalty Info, 2021 was the 7th consecutive year with less than 50 new death sentences and 30 executions. This shows that the death penalty is starting to get less use and is not effective as it once was thought to be. Rehabilitation also helped prisoners be able to find better ways to spend their time and has helped them in prison. With the use of rehabilitation tactics, the death penalty may become less used and possibly be abolished sooner. Some of the biggest tactics that have helped inmates has been job training, being able to participate in events to better themselves, and overall help reduce crime within the prison system. There are so many alternatives for the death penalty that can still have the same effect. All we have to do is look.